What if the worst season of your life was not the end of your story, but the beginning of your redemption? What if loss was not punishment, but preparation? The story of Ruth is not about fame, power, or miracles performed in the open. It is about quiet faith, hidden obedience, and a God who works behind the scenes when everything seems broken. This is the story of a woman who lost everything, yet gained a destiny that would change the world forever. This is the story of Ruth. In the days when the judges ruled Israel, the land was unstable. There was no king, no central leadership, and people often did what seemed right in their own eyes. During this time, a severe famine spread across the land of Judah. Crops failed, food was scarce, and families struggled to survive. In the town of Bethlehem, which means house of bread, there was no bread. A man named Elimelech lived there with his wife Naomi and their 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion. Faced with hunger and uncertainty, Elimelech made the difficult decision to leave the promised land and travel to the neighboring land of Moab, hoping to survive until the famine passed. At first, it seemed like the right choice, but tragedy soon followed. Elimelech died in Moab, leaving Naomi a widow in a foreign land. She was now without protection, inheritance, or security. Still, she had her 2 sons, and for a time, they were her comfort. The sons married Moabite women named Orpah and Ruth, and Naomi began to rebuild a fragile sense of family, but sorrow returned again. Both Mahlon and Chilion died, leaving 3 widows childless, vulnerable, and without hope for the future. Naomi had lost her husband. She had lost her sons. She had lost her future. After 10 years in Moab, Naomi was left with nothing but grief. When Naomi heard that the Lord had visited his people and restored food to Israel, she decided to return to Bethlehem. She urged her daughters-in-law to remain in Moab, to return to their families, and to rebuild their lives. Orpah wept and returned home, but Ruth refused to leave. Naomi warned her of poverty, loneliness, and hardship. Still, Ruth clung to her and spoke words that would echo through generations. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God my God. Ruth chose loyalty over comfort, faith over familiarity, and God over the world she knew. Together, Naomi and Ruth returned to Bethlehem. When they arrived, the town was stirred. The women recognized Naomi, but Naomi said, "Do not call me Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt bitterly with me." She believed she had returned empty, not knowing that God had already placed redemption beside her. They arrived at the beginning of the barley harvest. To survive, Ruth went out to glean in the fields, gathering leftover grain behind the harvesters. It was humble and exhausting work. By what seemed like chance, Ruth entered the field of a man named Boaz, a wealthy and honorable relative of Elimelech. Boaz noticed Ruth and asked about her. When he learned of her loyalty to Naomi, he showed her great kindness. He protected her, fed her, and instructed his workers to leave extra grain for her to gather. When Ruth returned home and told Naomi where she had worked, Naomi was astonished. Boaz was a kinsman redeemer, one who could restore their family line. Hope began to rise. Following Naomi's guidance, Ruth approached Boaz at the threshing floor with humility and respect, asking for redemption according to the law. Boaz was deeply moved by Ruth's character and praised her faithfulness. However, he explained that another relative had the first legal right to redeem. Ruth waited. At the city gate, Boaz presented the matter before the elders. The closer relative declined the responsibility. Boaz stepped forward, redeemed the land, and took Ruth as his wife. The people rejoiced. God blessed Ruth and Boaz with a son named Obed. Naomi, who once said she was empty, now held a child in her arms. Her sorrow turned to joy, and her bitterness to praise. Obed became the father of Jesse, and Jesse became the father of King David. And from the line of David came Jesus Christ, the ultimate Redeemer. Ruth's story reminds us that faithfulness is never wasted. Obedience is never unseen, and God can turn loss into redemption. If you are in a season of loss, remember, Ruth, God is working even when you cannot see it. Your story is not over.